guys, if you are joining me from Texas, you probably don't even know what this is. I know it looks like red celery, but it is not. This is rhubarb. We don't see it down here very often, but it was in the produce department in my store, and I bought some because it reminds me of my precious childhood up in Wisconsin, where this grows like a weed. My mother used to make the most wonderful rhubarb pies. So I'm gonna make one today, and if you'll come along with me, you will find that it is a very, very good thing. So the first thing we're gonna do is just chop it into little pieces. If you want it to be really soft, you make the pieces a little smaller so they bake up a little more delicately. If you want them to have a little more texture, you'll leave them a little bit larger. If you're buying this from frozen, which you can get in bags pre-cut, the texture probably will be a little bit different. So I have this all chopped, and I want about 5 cups because I like the fruit in my pie to be really deep. You can do as little as 4 cups, but I do want a little bit more, so I have 5. And rhubarb is really an interesting fruit. It's extremely sour. If you were to put this in your mouth, you probably could not take it. It would make your mouth almost turn wrong side out. It is so sour. It requires a lot of sugar. And the other interesting thing is rhubarb leaves are toxic, but the stalks are not. Now for this pie, it's gonna be a double crust pie. And I'm not gonna tell you guys how to make pie dough. I have other videos that show you how to make pie dough. If you wanna scroll through, you can find those. But while I'm rolling this out with my mama's little rolling pin, I will tell you my rhubarb story. We were very poor growing up, and my dad was always planning a new start someplace where he thought he could start a new business and make a boatload of money. And so we moved a lot. And he never really had 2 nickels to rub together. And so when I was probably about 4 years old, 5 years old, he decided to move us from Woodstock, Illinois, where he had a Singer sewing machine business, to Wisconsin. And my dad was a country boy at heart. He was raised on a farm, and he always loved rural America. So he didn't have much money, and he had decided to move us, and the only place he could find was an old mercantile store. It was abandoned, and it was out in the middle of the country in a field, and on just a little dirt road. And my dad rented that, and it was 2 stories, and downstairs was the mercantile area, and upstairs were some rooms. And it was an old 2-story white wood building, had a big porch across the front and 2 big doors. And the downstairs was the store, and I'm sure that the storekeeper lived upstairs. And that's in fact what we did. My dad made a makeshift kitchen downstairs in the corner, but the downstairs was by and large always empty. Very, very cold in the winter. And these big wood floors, we used to skate across those wood floors in our socks. And that whole downstairs was just a play yard for us. Oh, this is how I do my pie crust, by the way. I just roll it out on my tea towel. Then I pick up the corner and transfer it all to my rolling pin. Let me move this over here where you can see how I unroll it. And you just kind of let it fall into your pie plate. See, there you go. You don't even have to pick it up. You don't have to worry about rips and tears and all that stuff. Anyway, we used to run and play outside, of course, like kids do. And all around the outside of our storehouse grew these big, tall plants with huge leaves like umbrellas, kind of pointed at the bottom and rounded at the top. We actually used to pluck them and walk around the yard and play like they were our parasols. And my mom always told us, those are poison, do not play with those. You can be near them, but just make sure you don't ever get any of that in your mouth. It's poison. So we were always very, very cautious. One day, my mom came out with her apron on and a knife, and she bent over and started cutting the stalks of the poison plants. And we're like, Mom, what are you doing? That's poison. And she said, I'm gonna make a pie. I remember running in and telling Daddy, Mom's making poison pie. Little did we know it was rhubarb. And it was wonderful, free bounty for our family. Now, because rhubarb is so sour, it requires a lot of sugar. So I'll be using 1 3/4 cups of granulated white sugar. And always, always, it doesn't matter whether you're baking something savory or something sweet. Salt always brings out the flavor of everything. So I'm going to use maybe 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And we have to thicken it. So I'm going to use about 1/2 cup of flour. Now we want to mix this around, the flour, the sugar, and the salt. Mix it together until it's really homogeneous. Now, as the rhubarb cooks, it's going to be very, very wet. My mom used to just dump the flour and sugar in and coat her rhubarb and then place that in her pie plate. Over the many years of cooking, I have learned that rhubarb will ooze and it will make your pie crust kind of soggy. So it really makes a difference if you will take about 1/4 cup of your flour and sugar mixture and then just sprinkle it on the bottom of your pie crust. It makes kind of a barrier. And then you dump in your rhubarb. Isn't this so pretty? It's just a ruby red. Now I know when my mom used to cut it, sometimes some of the stalks would be mottled with kind of a really lime green color. They were beautiful too. Now we just take this mixture of flour and sugar and we're going to dump it over the rhubarb, sprinkling it all around. And what this will do is, as it bakes, the juice from the rhubarb will ooze with the flour and the sugar. The sugar will sweeten it, the flour will thicken it, and then we'll also have this barrier on the top between the rhubarb and our top crust, and that caramelized sugar on the top and the caramelized sugar on the bottom will actually make this kind of like waterproof barrier, and it will keep our pie crust really crisp. That's the only way I deviate from Bonnie's recipe. I don't want to mess with her cooking. She was the most incredible cook you ever knew. I think I've told you guys before, I always like to put a tea towel down because I do not like cleanup. So this keeps my counters from getting too icky. And then when I'm done, I can just roll up the tea towel, shake off the excess flour, and throw it in the washing machine. So we just do the same thing. Just put it on your rolling pin. I'm trying to do this so you guys can see everything. Put it on your rolling pin and then just unroll it across the top of your pie. Isn't that nice and easy? Okay, and then I trim around so that I have about the same amount all the way around because I'm picky about stuff. I kind of like things to be just right. Okay, then I'm gonna kind of press this under all the way around, the top crust and the bottom crust together. Just kind of tuck it under so then I can make my pretty little fluted edge. And you don't want to mess in your oven, so you want to seal your edges really, really well. All right, and just press it down all the way around. And then I like to make a pretty little edging with my thumb and forefinger. And then you need to make sure that there are plenty of vent holes in this pie. So just do a design on the top, any kind you want. My mom's pies, she always did a little wheat design. It always looked like wheat to me. I don't know if that's what she intended it to look like. She just did two little curving lines. And then she did this little slit on either side of that, and it just looked really pretty. So in honor of Bonnie, since this is her pie and my recipe from my childhood and a memory of how she sweetly used to gather rhubarb and make these gifts of love, I'm gonna make her design. And then I'm just gonna put a few more vent holes all the way around. Now I'm gonna do a little egg wash on the top. My mom probably wouldn't have done this, but I like the way it looks. But there's two different kinds of egg washes. There's an egg wash with the yolk if you want some golden color to your pastry or whatever you're making. I always add a little bit of water. Or you can just do the egg white with a little bit of water, and that will just make it really shiny. I'm gonna do both today, the yolk and the white with a little bit of water. Okay, just gonna brush it all around so we'll have this beautiful glistening finish. Just to tell you guys how resourceful my little mom was, I will tell you that there were a bunch of mason jars in the washroom when we moved into the storehouse, and my mom would even can rhubarb sauce and put it in those mason jars, and then we would have that all winter long. And it was this tart, wonderful sauce that we could eat over ice cream or pound cake or even in our oatmeal, and oh my goodness, it was so wonderful. Now the last thing Bonnie would have done was sprinkle a little granulated sugar on the top of her pies. She always did this because as it bakes, sugar caramelizes and it gives a really pretty little glisten to the top of your crust. So here's what Bonnie's pie would look like with a little wheat decor on the top. We're gonna put it in a preheated 425-degree oven for 15 minutes. Then we're gonna turn it down to 350 and leave it for about 45 to 50 minutes. Because remember, this is fresh rhubarb, it's kind of crunchy, and we want it to get really soft and mushy. We're gonna bake it until we see a little soft, oozy pink gel coming up through the little vent holes. So here we are. I actually baked this about an hour and 20 minutes. Had a lot of rhubarb in there, but I wanted it to be oozy, gooey, and for all that pink gel to just be bubbling out of the top of those vents. Oh, you should smell this. Okay, you guys, this is rhubarb pie, which you have to serve warm, and you have to serve with vanilla ice cream. Or at the very least, what my daddy did, and that is just douse it really good with a big serving of heavy whipping cream. This is where North and South unite. Y'all have rhubarb up north, but we have bluebell ice cream down here. What a wonderful combination. Now you guys, if you haven't had rhubarb, I will tell you it's probably slightly reminiscent of cherry pie. The crust, you know, the way we did that barrier with the sugar and the flour, it makes sure that the crust stays really, really crisp. It's still a little bit tart, but very sweet and delicious. There's nothing like rhubarb. You cannot describe it. Because it's so sour and maybe a tad bitter, it actually, to me, almost has a little bit of a metallic undertone. Not in a bad way. It's delicious. It's a bright, rich, deep, sweet flavor. This is a wonderful tribute to my sweet little mom. I will never think of rhubarb and not remember our wonderful adventures living in the storehouse. Here's to you, Bonnie. excellent. I hope you'll make some someday. Enjoy some rhubarb. Get out there and remember to do good and be good. I love you guys. God bless. Have a great week. I know we've been talking about pie, but you know there are a lot of other sweet things out there in this world. Just remember your words this week, words of grace that can be sweet to someone's soul and healing to their bones.